Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brothers, and my 1002nd album is Greatest Stories Live by Harry Chapin.
Hi, I'm Jeff Stephen, and you're listening to the 1002nd Album Podcast. I spent 10 years going through the 1001 albums you must hear before you die, and now I'm asking people that are important to me all about the albums that are important to them. Enjoy! This is the 1002nd Album Podcast. I'm Jeff Stephen, and I'm particularly excited about today's show because my guest today has a lovely and awe-inspiringly intelligent family. They've continued the streak of PE Islanders that I've met that I can't help but like. And she is the creator of many engaging and informative health videos. Please welcome today, Elizabeth Brothers.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. And the album of choice is Harry Chapin, Greatest Stories Live. And
Yes.
my question for you would be, where, when, and how did you first get into Harry Chapin?
Okay, so I'm going to back up in this for a quick second because the homework here is what is an album that is a must listen. I have a confession to make.
Mhm.
So my confession is I'm generally not a full album kind of person. So I love songs. Like if I
Mhm.
listen to an album, I'll find like songs that I love or like a couple songs on an album. And so um if you were to ask me the question, what is the song that we need to listen to? That's might be a different answer.
Fair enough.
But when what album came up? So this one instantly popped into my head.
Mhm.
This is an album that my parents introduced me to. So
Okay.
I think my parents saw Harry Chapin in concert. I like early when they were dating, and they had this album this is the only album they had of his.
Mhm.
um i I've honestly I've never even listened to another album of his, because so a couple things, like this definitely reminds me, it was one of those like formative years albums, right? So like when you're a kid and you put it on and you learn all the words before you even know what they mean.
Yes.
So it was one of those formative ones because my parents used to listen to it all the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think so I have another question for you is,
Sure.
when you like music, like when you
Yes.
find a song that you like, let's pick on a song, is it the musicality that attracts you to a song or the lyrics that attract you to a song, or a combination?
It could be the option C, all of the above, I suppose. But I think
Okay.
for me personally, it would probably be the music that's the initial hook, and then in most cases, the lyrics would be the layer that upon re-listening, I started to pick up more on. But the I think at first it'd be the music that's the initial hook for me.
Okay. And I ask this because I have asked this of other people. I'm the same. So I will love a song if the music is incredible. And that might
Mhm.
mean, I mean, it's very subjective, obviously, right? But if it's got an awesome like piano riff in it, or like
Mhm.
really great strings or whatever. Um, so for me, the musicality is attractive. And now in this very unofficial study that I've done,
Mhm.
anyone who has any sort of music training tends to get drawn to the musicality.
Okay.
People who don't have like a music background tend to get drawn to the lyrics more,
Okay,
which
interesting.
is, yeah, totally unofficial study. But the reason
Yeah.
I
Seems
asked
legit
that,
though.
well, but the reason I asked that is because this is probably the only album that the lyrics have been the major attractor for
Oh,
me.
okay. Nice.
Yeah.
All the more reason to make it the 1002nd one, the must hear, because it's the one
Yes.
where the lyrics provided the meaning at first. So I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
So it would have been so initially it was the childhood album, and it's
Yeah.
the only Harry Chapin that you have in the collection too. I like that. And it's funny
Yes.
that I've had that with some other artists where the initial experience is so positive, I'm almost reluctant to go beyond because it's like, no, I love this. This is sufficient. I think this is the experience I want with this artist.
Well, I think part of the appeal for me of this album is his interaction with the crowd, right?
Yes.
Is the liveness of it, is his like, he in one of the songs he kind of makes a joke and the whole crowd laughs.
Yes.
And so part of that, I think for me, it would feel so I don't know, small if
Hmm.
I listen to the if I kind of had the studio. So yeah, because this was my first exposure to him, yeah, this is like the baseline for me.
I like it. I like it. And what a baseline to have too. The
Yeah.
so I guess in this case, so you mentioned you're typically a song enthusiast. Have you heard so you know the live versions quite well. Are the studio ones comparable in any way, or do they have that sort of there? It feels like there's something missing when you hear them.
Well, they just, I mean, they're good. They're still good music,
Yes.
but and they're still like it's still the same lyrics. It's still good music.
Yes.
It's just missing that energy that I think when you go to a concert for someone that
Yes.
you love, it's the music is there, like the lyric, like all of that is there, but
Mhm.
there's just this energy about the music and energy about the event. Sorry, not even the
Yes.
music, but just this energy about the event. And you can still love the music, but lack the energy. And I think this one still makes me feel that energy a little bit. And so I
Yes.
think so the music and the lyrics are still great in the studio, but I think it's the energy of this that I love. I would have loved to have been in the concert. There's actually, I'm going to go a little off topic here too. There's another one. So Simon and Garfunkel, I
Yes.
won't talk about their any specific albums, but love their music, love their studio stuff, but they have a live album too that is just like, oh, like just
Yes.
you can feel the energy, right?
For
And so it
sure.
doesn't always come through on live albums, but I find in this one it does.
Oh, okay, nice, and I would tend to agree as well. And actually, as I should add to the confessions as well, I realized after you suggested this one, I'd first heard about this in my childhood as well. From I was actually in a children's choir back in the day, not meaning to
Okay.
brag, but the I remember at the time the only socially acceptable things when you're listening to your Walkman and somebody asked, "What are you listening to?" The only socially acceptable answers were Nirvana, The Offspring, or Green Day, or that sort of thing. And I
Yes. Yeah.
remember asking a fellow chorister, "Oh, what are you listening to?" And they said Harry Chapin. I was like, "Harry Chapin? I don't know them." And they mentioned Cats in the Cradle, and at the
Yeah.
time there'd been a popular cover. Ugly Kid Joe had done a cover of it, so I knew that one.
Yeah.
But then they mentioned 30,000 pounds of bananas, which was a
Yeah.
brand new track to me. I thought like that's a curious title for a tune. But since then again, I started to think that if you did a survey of people about Harry Chapin's music, sort of in the Family Feud tradition of we asked 100 people to name a Harry Chapin song, I would imagine that probably one of those Cats in the Cradle or 30,000 pounds of bananas would probably emerge as the number one answer. And my question would be for you would be, are his best known tunes also the best, or would you say there's some hidden gems that are worthy of more recognition as well?
Oh my God. 100% there are hidden gems in there.
Yes.
So yeah, his top two would be so the Cats in the Cradle. I think that's probably his best. Almost like I think there's probably a lot of people don't even know that that is by him,
Right.
right? Like because there's been so many covers of that and so many people have sung it. It was actually written, I think, by his wife,
Oh
oddly
yeah.
enough. So like yeah, kind of a combination of the two. But
Yeah.
so that might even be one that's not even necessarily often attributed to him if people recognize
Right.
it. The 30,000 pounds of bananas, I don't think anyone's covered that. I could be very wrong on
Yeah.
that, but no, my favorites are absolutely hidden deep in the album, very,
Okay.
very much. Yeah. Those Cats in the Cradle is a beautiful song, and you're
Sure.
just like every time you listen to it, you're just like, oh my God, my life is going too fast.
Yes. It's one of those ones like ABBA's slipping through my fingers, where it is like those as a parent, you're like, oh my goodness, yeah, the years are flying, as they say. So
Yeah, but he has another one on. So the very first one on the album called Dreams Go By,
yes.
and it's so this one is it was there's nothing funny about it, but it talks about this man from
Hmm.
the point of view of him with his kind of sweetheart, right? And so it talks about them when they're young, and then when they get married, and then when they have
Hmm.
kids, and so I remember listening to it, like I've always known the words forever, right? So you
Hmm.
listen to it, but now that I'm like aging, it hits
Yes.
me differently because you're like originally I identified with like the first era of his life, and then I
Yes.
identified with this era of the song, and now I'm identifying. So I think that's part of there's a couple of those themes in his music is like how time goes by. And
Yes.
I think that as you get older, or as I get older, I should
Yeah.
say, that those messages are even more like, oh my God.
Yeah. They resonate.
They
For sure.
absolutely do. Yeah. So like this ages very well for me because I like the stories within the songs.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned it's not a funny tune, but it was a funny intro to it. Like, because it's the opener of the album. That
Yeah.
I quite like the crowd going the 1 2 1 2 3 4, and
I
then yeah,
know.
and how he called the thing to a stop, where he referenced like the Godfather 2 or something, like where there's
Yes.
the frantic
Yeah.
strumming and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and for me as somebody who was relatively new to him, I thought that was such a great intro hook. I was like, okay, you've got my attention now.
Yeah.
I'm hooked. And like you said, there's that energy that with the whole crowd chanting that was quite the quite the starting point for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the other thing I think a lot of people don't know because he makes a point, I can't remember which song it is, but he does
Mhm.
make a point in one of his songs about how one of his songs got on the radio for a very brief period of time
Yes.
because they're all too long, right? Like,
Yes.
so the thing about Harry Chapin that I admire so much
Mhm.
is the stories that he
Yes.
tells. It's not like there's a lot of artists that are really well known, like Leonard Cohen is a poet,
Yep.
right? And
Right.
um there's artists that when you think about their lyrics, they're so well known for their artistry and their lyrics. And
Mhm.
not that Harry Chapin isn't, but for me, it's the stories that he's able to tell
Yeah.
through the course of a song that are so impressive. And I think he always needs a little bit longer than radio time to do that.
Yes.
And so I think that's why he probably never really, I mean, a lot of people knew about him, but I don't think he really hit mainstream. And that's why I think some of his great songs have gone rather undiscovered because they never got into that mainstream media.
Right. It didn't fit the 3 minute verse chorus verse sort
Exactly.
of
Yeah. No,
format. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
you can't cut the song out,
No.
right? Like you can't shorten them because you can't cut the
Yeah.
story apart, right?
That's right. If you trim the verse, then you lose the closure on the whole
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
tale. But I
Exactly.
guess that makes it all the more suitable to the live venue where he can sort of take the crowd on a journey. And I love
Yeah.
I scribbled down that quote too, where yeah, he said it was on the charts for 15 minutes, and so
Yeah.
I love that sort of self-deprecation. I thought
Yeah.
was fantastic. It's one of my favorite kinds of humor, and so
Yeah.
he clearly got the crowd won over with
Yeah.
that sort of angle.
And he almost comes, I think he comes from a different time. I mean, obviously he does. Like this album is from like 1975, but a
Mhm.
time where um people had longer attention spans and could
Sure.
like listen to longer songs. And he just, I don't know, I think music is a different thing now. Not that I'm an expert, but where he's like, now I got my method, I got my things, I got my stories I want to tell. I'm going to do it my way. If it works for you guys, great. And it ended up working for him.
Yes.
But I don't know. I don't know if you could break out of it's a little bit out of the mold. I don't know if you could break out of the mold
Yeah,
in
and
this
I think
thing.
that definitely does work for him. Where instead of sort of he's not organizing focus groups. Like, what sort of format do you want to hear? Like you said,
Yeah.
it's this is the way I do things.
Yeah.
It's not going to work in some formats, but it's how I do it. So for those who are interested, come join me at the show, and
Yeah, exactly.
it's good. And I'm really pleased you picked a live album as well because it's the first one anyone's chosen for the 1,000 second one
Oh,
as well. So
okay.
it's a live premiere for it,
Yeah.
and also it's a format I do tend to shy away from
Hmm.
because when I'm listening to some live albums, it feels like I'm listening to someone else's memories because it's
Hmm.
like I wasn't at the show. It's a recording of an event I wasn't actually present for. And in
Hmm.
this case as well, I think you said it was from the mid 70s. So
Hmm.
neither of us existed
We're bored. Yeah.
when this was recorded, but I didn't get that sense at all. And so I think my question for you would be, why do you think that even decades after it came out, that this concert isn't really a quote unquote you had to be there kind of recording?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I would say, um, so for the reason that the energy of the
Yes.
crowd and the dynamic still comes through.
Yes.
And I think that I'm grateful that I can listen to the album because I couldn't be there.
Right.
Right? Like I agree with you. I've listened to albums that I'm like, oh, you had to be there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but for this, I'm just like, I'm so glad this was captured because I
Yes.
didn't have the option to
Right.
be there. And so now I get to experience it. it probably would have been a different experience if it was live for us, if we were able to
Sure.
go. But yeah, I think it's just because the energy, for me anyway, was captured so well and portrayed through that, through the recording.
Absolutely. And I like that idea where it's the gratitude for it, that
Yeah,
if it weren't for this being available, then we would have missed that whole layer of the live experience. So I like that. I like
yeah.
that. The a couple other ones from the running order. And again, I think I'm still relatively like you've beat me by a couple decades of experience with the album. So I've still got some catching up to do
Fair
with
enough.
listening to it. But there's something about his interactions, like you said, where
Hmm.
I wrote down at the beginning of A Better Place to Be, where he's introducing the song and he's saying, oh, this was from when I was in Watertown, New York, and this was sort of just like gentle smattering of applause. And he says, that's more than it deserves.
Yeah,
It's just,
I spent a week there one
yes,
afternoon.
exactly.
Yeah.
What a great line. And it's fantastic because I think that the length of that track was something in the ballpark of 10 minutes too.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which just wouldn't fit on a studio album,
No.
I don't think.
But did you get, and you can say, you can say no to this because I'm not sure how many times you listen to it, but that song, like when it comes on, I'm in that bar with them. Like the premise of the song is that this midnight watchman
Yes.
goes to this bar and he tells the waitress the story of this beautiful girl that he took home who
Yes.
kind of ran away. I think they were all emotionally damaged or whatever. And it's almost like I'm sitting in the next booth listening to this story and I can see the like him and the waitress
Yeah.
having this interaction. And I think I don't know, he manages to for somehow put you right in the middle of the
Yes.
story. Another place where he does it, this is less of a story song, but other
Yeah.
one is Circle, which is
Okay.
not, I wouldn't say is one of my favorite songs on the CD, but again with the interaction with the crowd, right? Like
Yes.
it's like they're singing it with him and back to him. And he also several times in the album he pulls different band members up to like showcase them and show
Sure.
their talents. And yeah, so there's a lot of interaction for sure. But yeah, no, the like when he gets you in a story, the other one, Mr. Tanner,
Yes.
which is about a dry cleaner or something, or a guy who does laundry who goes to audition in New York for the, I forget, for the, anyway, whatever, on like one of the main singing things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's almost like you're in the audience watching this guy sing. Like I don't know how he does that, but for me it feels like he puts me right in the middle of the story.
Yeah. And that's probably the mark of a really good storyteller is that they paint these vivid
Yeah,
scenes and you feel like you know the characters and
absolutely.
that sort of thing. And what I'm excited about is that I did quite like the album and I've heard it a few times, but I haven't had that full immersion yet. So
Hmm.
which is kind of exciting for me as a relatively new listener to know that there's still another couple levels I have to like that I
Yeah,
haven't like I can't just sort of check it off the list and be like, oh yeah, that's done. On to the next thing because there's still more to glean from it, which is great.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think part of the appeal for me too was that it felt like an authentic live recording as well. I don't know the background of it, whether it's been edited a lot in the studio after the fact, but it did feel pretty true to the tape of the show. Like it didn't feel like there was a lot of overdubs or that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
the one the I think it's called WOLD. So I
Yes.
like when they're sort of chanting the letters, and it's one of those things where I don't know if they hit the note perfectly, but that adds to the appeal because
Yeah.
it's sort of like yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost even better that it's not super polished. It's like no, we're
Yeah.
feeling it and WOLD and
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think he makes it relatable. So he like even with that you're like
Mhm.
any it doesn't he doesn't care about your skills. He just wants
Right.
you to join in. And
Yes.
that's kind of like this, the way that the songs are written too, is the songs are written about just everyday people, right?
Yes.
It's not about like come live in my amazing life with my millionaire
Yes.
friend. Like it's just about people that you're just like, oh my god, that's could be me, or it's my
Yes.
neighbor or whatever. It's yeah, he just makes it very relatable, from the music to the singing to
Yeah.
the yeah.
Yeah, and it's storytelling. So
Yeah.
and you mentioned with the the audience participation perhaps no more present than on the 30,000 pounds. Just the
Yes.
the chanting and that
Yeah.
was great. And again, the what's the line he says something about it sucks. There was the feedback he got about the one of his endings, I think it was, and he said
Oh
someone
yeah,
told
I
him it
can't
sucks,
remember.
but
Yes, I
it
can't remember the line, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
but I like that as a lifelong Wayne's World fan, the idea of having alternate endings also appealed to me quite a bit as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So,
exactly. He's like, fine, I'll fix it. I'll do this one
yeah,
instead.
exactly. But no, all in all, just something else, and that's sort of yeah the banter I think is so great that it's like we grew up with the Tragically Hip, and going to
Yeah,
see what Gord Downey would do at the show was half of the fun of going to see what sort of things would happen between the songs. And I definitely got that vibe here that it wasn't just okay, head down, launch from one song to the next. It's very aware of who's there with him and
yeah. No, so not the Harry Chapin, obviously. I have not attended nearly as many live concerts as you have. I know that for sure. But the ones that stick out to me are like I remember going to one that I was just like, this is terrible
yeah,
because he just got on stage and he just sang his music. And not that his music was bad, it was great.
yeah,
But then another one I went to where they were incredibly interactive with the audience. And it was
yes,
almost like that was as much of value and enjoyment and engagement than the music, right?
yeah.
And that is what I think. And so, yes, absolutely. This has like both of those, like that balance between the two.
Yeah, and it's funny. Wendy and I had that juxtaposition in one concert where the opener did a cover of "Everybody Has a Hungry Heart," and
Okay.
I loved how they said like you can't replicate this looking down at a device or anything, and so because everyone was singing along with the chorus, but
Yeah.
then the headliner turned out just the energy was totally flat, and even if they were
Ah,
technically proficient
yeah.
because there was none of that sort of interaction at all. It just came across as just like, oh, well, this is,
Oh,
it
that's
just ended up
so,
being sort of flat. And so, but just a further reminder that, the real performers have
yeah,
that sort of interaction component as well. Yeah.
absolutely.
Nice. So I guess, I always like to have the sort of catch-all or the summary or the closing argument. Um, of all the albums out there, why is Greatest Stories Live album number 1002?
Well, because it blends story with music, with relatability, with humanity,
Mhm.
with um, everyday experience.
Yeah.
I think it just seems so tangible and enjoyable and heartfelt.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yep. And I think that's a pretty compelling combination when all of
Absolutely.
those
Yeah,
work
I
together.
think so too.
I like it.
Well, hence why I chose it. It's funny because I've tried, like, I've mentioned this album to a lot of people. They're like, What? Like, very few people recognize this album or know what it is. And I think even for your listeners, they're going to be like, What the?
Yeah.
But at least to have, I don't know, I think everyone should check this out if you like that sort of blend of yeah, it's very folky too.
Hmm.
If someone hasn't if you're kind of looking for the genre, it's I would say it's more of the folky
Yeah.
side if that is appealing to anybody. But yeah, so that's my plea for
Yeah.
Harry Chapin.
And well delivered at that. And to me it's I love the range too that people are suggesting where it's not all like not everyone's picking, oh, you forgot about this album by the same, and everyone chooses the same band, but just like 10
The
albums from the same
Beatles
discography.
or
Yeah,
the
exactly. Like
yeah.
you missed all these albums by the Beatles, which again, all would be worthy, but
Yep.
it's neat seeing a whole, collection available. So, and showing what an impossible question it is too, that really you can't narrow it down to one because there's much more to be heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that yeah, I love that it's just that unique. And it's so funny because every album touches somebody in a different way.
Mhm.
And like there's those albums that are objectively great, like
Yeah.
your 1001,
Yeah.
right? And so I think this is a neat little um addition to that.
For sure. And we've seen even from our very small sample size of the two of us, like you can hear it for the first time as a child, hear it for the first time much later, but it can have a big impact regardless of the where, when, because it's just some timeless stuff on here.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Well, a huge thank you for coming today, Elizabeth, and thank you for the recommendation because I think this will stay in the rotation well beyond this project.
All right. Well, let me know when you get into the other layers and we'll chat about it again.
Yes, sounds good. Enjoy the day.
All right. Thanks so much.
This has been the 1000-Second Album Podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.